Welcome to the Bold Money Revolution podcast. This is your source for straight talking, no fluff, business and high performance conversations that add real depth and value to the way bold leaders live, work, and thrive. I'm your host, Tara Newman. I'm here to show you how to optimize your performance as a leader so that you can grow a business that is profit-rich, efficient, and allows you to generate real, tangible wealth for yourself and others. We are here to help you lead with your values, to perform without overwhelm and burnout, and to do your most important work in the world. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Bold Money Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Tara Newman, and today I am here with a very special guest, Jim Kalbach. He is the chief evangelist over at Mural. He is the author of Mapping Experiences and my absolute favorite book that changed everything for me, especially in my business, The Jobs to Be Done Playbook. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Tara. It is great to be here.
So I am just going to freely admit to my whole audience, because they usually probably see me as incredibly confident, but I am having a fangirl moment that I get to sit down and talk to Jim. And the funny thing is Jim is just a very regular, normal guy who puts his pants on one leg at a time, like the rest of us. But for me, reaching out to Jim and having him on the podcast is a super, super big deal. And so today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics that I really started to understand way better after finding Jim's work is how to align your marketing and your offers around your customer needs. We're going to talk about why it's important. We're going to talk about the role that empathy plays, and we're going to talk about a framework that makes it easier. And the reason why this was such a big deal for me is because when I found Jobs to Be Done and subsequently Jim, I finally stopped thinking that I suck at marketing. I finally started to see myself as maybe the best marketer and the right person to be really spearheading this in my company, and how my strengths as someone who is a relator, who's into relationships, who lives by the motto of be helpful, be human, be humble, who I think I have a good amount of emotional intelligence and empathy, how these things that I thought were weaknesses in marketing are really my strengths. So thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I'm glad you phrased things that way. It was great when you and I met, Tara, as well too. You know, I've been practicing Jobs to Be Done for a while, and I wrote the book. But it's great to see people taking that to heart and actually having it help them. So you've been inspiring to me to follow your story too, Tara.
So, you start, one of the things in the book that you say is business success comes from understanding human needs and motivations.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that?
I mean, we think the business of business is not money and numbers. That's part of it, right? But the business of business is people, because in the end, when we talk about a market, right, that's like anonymous. It's just like consumers, and let's count the eyeballs that are looking at our thing. But there's actually human beings behind all of that. And if you look at the reasons why startups fail, I just encourage everybody, just go Google, why do startups fail? There's been lots of assessments of that. One of the top 3 answers, I guarantee on any list you find, one of the top 3 answers is we didn't understand the market needs, right? And that's not the generic market. What they're saying is we didn't understand the people's needs in our market, right? So it's so core to business that sometimes we overlook it. And the business of business and the hard part of business is people, because let me tell you, people are irregular and irrational and unpredictable. And what Jobs to Be Done does is it gives you a framework to make that fuzziness and that unpredictability. It makes it a little bit more streamlined and allows you to focus.
Yeah. So one of the biggest problems that I see among my audience, who are what I would call micro business owners, especially women, there's a statistic that says 88% of women earn $100,000 in revenue or less in a year. And that's really not a tremendous amount of money. And the numbers are very small to how many women are running $1 million businesses, or even something over 500,000. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making is they sell what they want to sell, not what people want to buy. So being able to switch our framework and our lens away from what do I want to why are people buying, what will they buy, has really been a game changer for me. And you said focus on objectives independent of the means to accomplish them. And how does that play into why people buy or what they buy, or how there's a disconnect between what you want to sell and what people will buy?
Yeah, I think the disconnect, that's a great question. And that right there is core to jobs to be done. When I hear of somebody, doing some investigation or applying some technique, whether I qualify that or jobs to be done is that test question, exactly what you said. Are you talking about a technology, a solution, a brand, a product? Or are you talking about a problem that people have, or an objective that people have, was the word that you used there, I think, right from my book. So what Jobs to be Done does is it shifts your perspective. I love the fact that you just used the word lens, right? Mm-hmm. Because the problem, and to get to your question, is the problem is that very often business thinking is so colored by its own lens or its own perspective. You're looking at people through the lens of your own product, brand, and solution, that you don't see it from the other way around. And what Jobs to be Done does is it says, let's shift our perspective, particularly when you're trying to find your opportunity for innovation or for growth, right? You say, let's put all that aside, right? Our customer journey map and our price point and our go-to-market motion, that all matters. Let's just put that aside for a second and let's flip our perspective. And what Jobs to be Done does is it gives you a consistent and repeatable way to flip your perspective and see things from a different vantage point. I liken it to an out-of-body experience. It's like you float out of your own business and you put all the typical MBA stuff and the numbers behind, and you're just floating above yourself, looking back at yourself as if you were a human being that you're trying to service, that you're trying to market to, or that you want to support in some way or another, right? And what that can do is open your eyes in a new way and point to opportunities that you're otherwise blinded by your own bias.
Yeah, I think that, what we think marketing is versus what marketing actually are two different things. And I think especially with social media, because I think social media becomes synonymous with marketing, and they think that social media tactics and stunts is marketing. But none of what you're posting on social media lands unless you can speak the language of your buyer. And so that's really where Jobs to be Done theory comes into place, and jobs thinking, or jobs to be done framework. So can you explain what exactly is Jobs to be Done? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just used a very, very appropriate work. I see it as a framework. It's a framework for listening to the people that you want to serve and distilling specific categories or types of information that have very regular formats. So it comes with a little bit of rigor, even though it's qualitative at first. It's, interviewing and listening, literally listening. But it comes with a lot of rigor in how you're investigating and analyzing that feedback, which is otherwise irrational and not normalized. You then normalize it, right, by putting it into different categories. So you have job steps and outcomes, and there's emotional statements. So there's this nice categorization scheme and how you formulate things. What that allows you to do is then prioritize and find opportunities. So you can actually then operationalize that, even in quantitative ways. You can end up saying, with Jobs to be Done, you can take that listening, operationalize it, and then end up saying, what are the top unmet needs in my market? Right? What are the top unmet needs? That's essentially the core to product market fit. When you talk about marketing, you need product market fit, or as you say, those words are not going to land on people because that just becomes fluffy clickbait or whatever that might be. But if you're actually solving something that is an unmet need, anything you do will resonate more. Right. So those traditional marketing efforts have a complete different relevance if you've struck a chord and you have product market fit.
So that's really one way that Jobs to be Done has really helped me, in the sense that, so Jobs to be Done is a really large body of work. It's not just Jim's body of work or something that I know. It's a very large body of work. And the reason why I have a tremendous amount of respect for Jim and what he's done is he's distilled it down to what I have found to be some of the simplest ways of talking about Jobs to be Done. And for me, with the clients that I have, with the small business, the size business that they are, where we're wearing a lot of hats, it has to be as simple as possible. And so one thing that I came across in Tony Ulwick's work was this differentiated strategy, which says if you find an underserved market who has an unmet need, that is really the key to differentiation. And I don't know that there's anything anybody with a micro business that they want more is to be able to differentiate themselves in such a loud and noisy, cacophonous marketplace. It's nuts these days, and it's only getting louder. So like this idea of being able to differentiate yourself and having a framework for that to say, okay, how is my market underserved and how do they have unmet needs? Step one. And then really looking at, like I went and I said, we're selling what we want to sell and not what people want to buy, but we have to start somewhere. And so starting with what you want to sell isn't a bad place to start a research project, not to start selling.
Yeah.
Right. That's where I think people don't realize how much they need to listen, which is the word that you brought up. And what I love about Jobs to Be Done is it gives you a framework for asking good questions and listening and really knowing how to then put that information around. So can we talk about the four forces? Because I think the four forces are life. Like inject that into my veins. Yeah. I will teach four forces to everyone for everything from market research to sales conversations and with my family. Like if you want to get something done, understand the four forces.
Right.
And that's a concept inside of Jobs to Be Done theory. So what are the four forces that we should all be aware of when we're looking to market our offer?
Right. Yep. So the four forces is a technique within Jobs to Be Done. I like the way you characterize it. I see Jobs to Be Done as a field. There's lots of practitioners and they have their own techniques. Some of those are branded. Some of those are fuzzier ideas. Some of them are more specific. But the four forces is a specific technique within the field of Jobs to Be Done that Bob Moesta, a thought leader in Jobs to Be Done, made popular. And he's basically looking at when an individual is making a shift in how they're going to get a job done. That is, they're going to adopt a new innovation or a new solution, right? So I'm going to change from one way of working to another way of working, or I'm going to switch from one solution to another to get a job done, right? That there are things that pull that innovation towards them. And those tend to be some of the factors that we talked about, right? Those unmet needs. Right. But there are also things that they're going to be pushing away from because change is hard as well, too. Right. So from that perspective, Jobs to Be Done is really focused on that point of change, because ultimately that's what we want to do as innovators is we want to put a new idea out in the world that people will pull in to their own and call it their own and have that solve their problem. Right. That's where you get that. That's where you get that product market fit. Right. So it's a very simple analysis tool. It's basically a diagnostic tool, right? That when you're looking at that change from the job performer's perspective, right, you're looking at why they might change or why might they resist changing. It's both of those things at the same time, that there are factors, right? That there's making it better. There's a problem solving. This pushes it towards the adopter, right? Okay, this is going to solve my problem, right? And then there's also an attraction to the solution that is going to pull it as well, too. So there are these kind of two pull factors there. My current way, first of all, it's my current way doesn't work. And second is this new solution will help me, right? That's going to pull things towards the job performer, but they're also going to push things away. There are inertias and anxiety as well, too. There's two factors that will push that away as well, too. So the push factors, the benefit of the solution, and then how that solves their problem. But there's also anxiety and inertia that will push that away. So it's really trying to look at what are those inbound forces and what are those outbound forces that might help predict why somebody adopts a solution or not.
Yeah. So why somebody will buy and why somebody won't buy. So when we talk about like that change, right, that's really the point of purchase is they're looking to make a change, and that's happening at the point of purchase. So things like really understanding what's the progress that they're looking to make.
Correct.
Right. why are they looking to make that progress?
Yeah.
When you're talking to somebody in doing market research or even in a sales conversation, understanding what's the progress they're looking to make. Why now are they looking to make that progress? These are some of the things that are going to be pulling them forward.
Yeah,
and saying like, yeah, this is why I should be buying.
Yeah.
But then what I love about the four forces is actually the way the force goes in the other direction, and like what's pulling them away from the change, and what's pulling them away from taking this next step. And those are questions that really help us identify objections.
Yeah, exactly.
To why somebody wouldn't want your product, or why somebody isn't going to hire your product to do a job or to buy from you. And that's, what are your hesitations and concerns?
Yep.
And then the one about, what are you worried will happen when you make this change, or what are you worried will be different?
Right.
When you make this change, and really understanding why people are so in inertia at some points.
Yeah.
And how can we then be creating messaging and content around the points of inertia and resistance to change to get them into the solution that they actually want?
Right. Exactly.
And that takes such a level of understanding human behavior.
Yeah.
And that place of like empathy, right? Because we can't control when people buy.
Right.
We can't control if they're going to buy or when they're going to buy. And I think sometimes when you're in business and you need money now, right? That really stinks.
Yeah.
But if we're consistently understanding human behavior and thinking, how can we be compassionate and empathetic and to navigating these hesitations or concerns,
yes,
it makes us a way better marketer and salesperson.
Absolutely. And I think, if you look at the history of innovations and innovations that have failed, and I've used the word innovation for anything new you're putting out into the market, right? Very often we see this pattern of the innovators very, very, very convinced of and attached to their own innovations, to the point where they're not looking at those concerns and anxieties of the individual or the inertia around change. Right? It's just, hey, I got the greatest thing since sliced bread. Of course, everybody's going to go out there and buy one. Or of course, everybody's going to start using my solution or adopting what I have to offer. Right. And then it doesn't happen. And they're like, wait, why is that? And what Four Forces helps you do is look at both sides of the equation, not only the benefits and the problem solving that you offer, but also what might be the resistance to change that somebody might have in that equation. Then you can calibrate not only your marketing messaging, but also the offering itself to fit better into that landscape, right? So it can help with purchase, but it can also just help in general with what I call adoption, because that's a little bit deeper than purchase. I want people to buy. I actually want them to use it. Right. Yes. And I wanted to solve their problem, because guess what? They're going to buy more. They're going to tell their friends, or they're going to stay with me longer. If you're a SaaS or subscription business, you want all of those things as well, too. So, the point of purchase is kind of the first effect that you get of this type of thinking, but it's actually deeper than that. And again, the Four Forces is a simple diagnostic tool to look at the current way and then the change that job performer is undergoing, and look at those push and pull factors and the anxiety and the inertia on the other side. So in moving in one direction and then moving in the other direction through these four lenses. And what can that can help you do is shift your perspective. I mean, as we said before, so that you're not just so consumed with your own greatness or how much you're convinced of your solution. And you know what, that takes empathy, Tara. I love that you use that word, because if you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, you're like, oh, they do have anxiety. Oh, they are resistant to change, right?
Oh, they've been screwed over before and they're hesitant about purchasing now.
Totally. All of those things come out. But the question is, are you looking at that in a systematic way? That's why I like Jobs to Be Done, because it gives you all these frameworks and these tools to look at human behavior in very specific ways and very consistent and repeatable ways.
And to capture it as qualitative data, and what's interesting is what we were just talking about, because I work with experts who are running service-based businesses. And I know for myself, coming out of corporate, being an expert, it was really frustrating coming into my own business and having to explain that I was an expert. And that people weren't just going to hire me while I was really well sought after in my career.
Yeah.
nobody knew me
Right.
in this role or this context. And I would get really tantrumy about it. But what we're asking you to do as an expert is to walk on the spectrum from ego to empathy.
Yeah.
Right. Like putting something out and wanting to sell it because that's what you want to sell without any regard for whether or not it's what people want to buy. Right. Is coming from a place of ego.
Yeah.
Where I always tell experts, get off the stage and get into the audience, which is what Jobs to Be Done and things like the 4 Forces really help you do, because it provides questions for you to be asking people and to be curious about, and then capture so you can look for themes and patterns and data. So I want to just, because we're talking, I'm noticing you and I are so into it that we're talking around some things that I just want to clarify for people.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm pretty sure that unless you're listening to this and you're in the Bold Profit Academy, you probably have never heard of Jobs to Be Done theory before. So are there some principles or just like basics to help people understand a little better? What are the concepts, some of the concepts of Jobs to Be Done? Like, why is this important? What is it about?
Yeah. I mean, it is ultimately trying to get you to see things from a different light. I love the idea of, the ego, which I think is important. Anytime you have an innovation or you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to market something, you want to be confident and you want to believe that you have a solution that will help people. But you have to realize from an very empathetic standpoint that the people that you're serving may not see it that way. In fact, they very often don't. And the best innovators and best entrepreneurs are able to balance the ego with the empathy. So what Jobs to Be Done does, it gives you a language. I like to see Jobs to Be Done as a language. It gives you terms. There are these techniques that we just described one of, which was the 4 Forces. But I see it as an even more abstract framework. Right. And there are some categories of information in order to come up with a theory for why someone might buy your solution or adopt your innovation. You need to come up with categories of information. So there are some basic things like the job performer. Who do you want to innovate for? Yeah, that's the who. Notice I didn't say user or customer, right? They're the individuals who are trying to get that job done. They might do it with a different solution. It might be a competitor solution, or it might even be a completely different solution. That doesn't matter. We're just looking at people trying to perform that job. And then we're also looking at a target job. That's what's in your line of sights as an innovator, as an entrepreneur. What are you trying to bring to the adopting population? And those two things right there, the job performer and the target job, are basically who do you want to innovate for and where do you want to innovate? It's basically answering your strategic question, where do you want to play from a very human standpoint, right? You can answer where do you want to play? That's part of strategy is like, where am I playing? You can answer that question with geography, or you can answer that question with, small business or large business, right? But from a human standpoint, where do you want to play is answered by the job performer and the target job. And what Jobs to Be Done does is it gives you a framework for identifying those two things, the job performer and the target job. For instance, Tara, we just brought out the Jobs to Be Done Canvas 2.0, which actually maps out all of these elements in the language of Jobs to Be Done as I see it. And there's some other elements as well, too. But I think some of the key things that you want to look at are, what are the steps for getting the job done? What are the measures of success or the outcomes? And that's where the unmet needs comes from. And you can even look at the emotional aspects as well, too. Mm-hmm. So we look at the job performer trying to get a job done. What's the process for getting that done? How do they know they did it well? The measures of success or the outcomes. And how are they feeling while they're doing that job? So those are just some basic building blocks of Jobs to Be Done that allow you to filter the listening that you do, and you can filter it into those different buckets. Once you have those different buckets, you can start putting it together into different models. You can feed it into the 4 Forces, or you can create what I call a job map, which is a chronological sequence of the steps. So you can really just pinpoint where you're affecting them, at what point in the process. You can also then prioritize, and this is something you can do quantitatively, you can prioritize the outcomes and literally find the unmet needs in the marketplace as well, too. So it comes with a framework with language that are basically categories that allow you to format and put information that you hear from talking to people into different buckets. And then what you can do is you can run methods or plays. And the book I wrote is called The Job to Be Done Playbook, right? Which is basically then all of the techniques. Once you have that basic language sorted out, you can then run it through different techniques.
Yeah. So the way this really helped me in my business is, in the business consulting coaching space on the internets, it's a pretty noisy group. There's lots of different jobs that people are trying to get done. There's lots of different ways they're trying to get these jobs done. And I needed to find a way to differentiate myself. And what I realized was that there's so much hype around people trying to teach people how to run 7-figure and 8-figure businesses, that I was actually going to talk to the people who don't want a 7 or 8-figure business. So that was how they were being underserved, is they would open their app and every ounce of marketing is around 7 figures, 8 figures. And they're like, this is exhausting. I have a family. Do I really need to make this much money? That sounds like a lot of hard work. I don't want to have a huge team, right? So that was one way. But then where they had an unmet need, which is something that is important to them, but unsatisfied, right?
Correct.
Is that how, right? So this is something that's important to them, but it's not being satisfied in the market. And how do you know they're not satisfied? They're still in the market.
Yeah.
People who are satisfied and have the job done are not in the marketplace.
There you go.
Right? Yeah. So, and this is really where jobs to be done. And I banged my head against the wall with it for so long, because I could talk about this from make money, grow your business, increase revenue, get more sales, like however you wanted to talk about it. But after I did the market research with the 4 forces, what I realized were my people want to get paid. So yes, they want to make money,
right?
But they want to get paid.
Yeah.
Right? They want to take home the money they're making. And the reason why they want to take home the money they're making is because they want to create financial stability and security for their families and sure, go on a vacation. But it started to give me this lens. So now I'm not talking about grow your business because that felt hard. I'm not talking about make more money because everybody's talking about that. I'm not talking about get more sales because people feel nervous about selling and it kind of like immediately shuts them down. But we're talking about getting paid. Get paid, right? Yeah. But then there are these associated jobs that need to happen. So people freak out and they say, but I can't just pick one job. And that's not what we're asking you to do. Jim talks about this. I think you changed your language now. It's core job.
I call it the target job is the one you're in your focus right now, and then I have related jobs, which are other things that are relevant to you, but you're that's not on the front burner, so to speak.
Correct. Yeah. So when we are front facing in our marketing, we're talking about getting paid. We're talking about financial security and stability as the reasons why people want to be making money. And then we have these associated jobs or related jobs. And those related jobs form the content, the curriculum pillars in our group program. Right. And there are things like accelerate your revenue. There are things like understand why people buy. That's our jobs to be done, right? Section. And marketing. Right. We talk about, I'm a Profit First certified consultant. So there's a component in there around making sure you're keeping your money. You're actually profiting so you can pay yourself. There's a section in there around sales, but those are the associated jobs that need to happen so that you can get paid.
Yeah, you can get paid. Yeah.
So I just wanted to just share with people kind of an example of how that works. And then what I super duper, triple duper love about jobs to be done is it's agnostic of technology.
Yes.
Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. I mean, that's the litmus test for jobs to be done. And anything that my students do, or if I'm coaching or consulting, that I'll look, my clients, what they're doing is that when you express what you heard, so I'm listening to a human being that I want to serve. I'm not interviewing a customer or a user. Notice the difference in language there. I don't see them as a customer or user. I see them as a human being. What I want to listen for are different categories of information. And you just mentioned a couple that were important for your field. Every domain or every field is going to have its own little categorization scheme there. But what you then want to do is you want to express what you heard, what you listened to, in a way that does not have any technology solutions or methods associated with it, because that's where the bias at the beginning of the session, Tara, I was talking about bias, that you're colored by, you're almost blinded by your own lens of looking at people through your own solution and your own brand. And the way that we get this perspective shift or the out of body experience is by not mentioning you, your product, or any technology. And what we're fundamentally trying to do is we're trying to notate what we heard in terms of fundamental human intent. What are people, what is their objective? What are they trying to get done? And by doing that, we not only gain this perspective shift that we've been talking about, but you also get longevity. And I say that because technology changes at a much, much, much quicker rate than jobs that people are trying to get done. For instance, just take, if I broadly said, listen to music, that's a job, right? Listen to music. Like 100 years ago, you used to have a phonograph that you had to crank up, and you had these discs that you put on top of it, or sometimes even a cylinder, right? And then later on came the tape cassette and the 8-track, and then there were CDs, and then there was the Walkman, and then there were MP3 players, and now there's Spotify, right? The technology has changed, but if I look at listen to music and how people do that and what they're trying to accomplish, it actually hasn't changed over 100 years. The technology has changed, not what people are trying to get done. So the point I wanted to make there is by notating things without technology solutions or methods referenced at all, you not only get that perspective shift, but you get a longevity of your work. So it's not volatile work. This isn't like NPS data or sales data from last quarter. It's it's foundational work. Once you do the jobs to be done work, it's going to remain valid for years to come, right? And that has a future-proofing effect to it. That if I can create a job map or do a jobs to be done analysis independent of technology, I can ask myself, will it be like that in 5 years or 10 years? And the answer is, yeah, it probably will be, because the thing that's going to change and be volatile on you is the technology, not the human needs. So it becomes a very powerful tool and a foundational tool once you do that. And that's why we expunge references to technology solutions or methods. And that's what I do a lot in my courses. As I mentioned, Tara, I'm actually in the middle of a course, and we do some exercises, and then I go through the students' quote unquote homework, and I'm like, you just mentioned the technology. How do you write that without a technology? And it sounds pedantic, but it's important for getting that perspective shift.
Important.
Yeah. Right.
It's so important. I want everybody to just go and back that up and listen to it again, because we're so distracted by grow an online business, grow a business on Instagram, grow a business that has a Facebook group, grow a business that you're pigeonholing yourself, and you're actually not creating an asset.
Right.
An asset is something that's going to be there over time.
That's right.
And not have to be redone every year because the algorithm has changed.
Right.
Or because something is different. That's just a lot of rework.
Yeah. And then it becomes more strategic too, if you're thinking that way, right? Mm-hmm. Because guess what? Instagram's not going to be around in 5 years, or Facebook or whatever. Twitter probably won't be around in a year the way it's going, right? So if your marketing plan is targeting Twitter, it's like, no, let's think about what you're trying to accomplish, and let's write it in a way that it doesn't matter if it was done with, flying an airplane overhead, leafleting a neighborhood, or being done in VR. Right, because we're going to try to future-proof that and talk about that independent of the means.
Yeah, I always joke around. I can't stand when people. I feel old when I say this, but like people like talking about an online business. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. It's just a business. Like when we're on Mars, is this going to be we're now going to run an intergalactic business? Like I'm confused. Like it's the fundamentals and the principles stay the same, and all that qualifiers doing for you is confusing you and distracting you from the actual outcomes.
That's right.
That you're looking for. And that's why I will forever and a day teach jobs to be done theory in my programs, because it's also not a template. It's a framework. It allows you to put things in with guide rails to it and come out with something that is truly unique and differentiated, and that works.
That's right. Yeah.
That works. And I think, like, especially in the service-based business space, there is so little innovation happening. It's like we think innovation is meant for like tech spaces or something like that. And that's why you just get businesses that all look the same. There's 10 chiropractors in my neighborhood. They all went to the National Chiropractic Convention where they got handed the playbook with the templates for running a back-end office as a chiropractor. But why should I go to you versus anybody else? How are you targeting an underserved market with an unmet need? What is the job that needs to be done? Because if it's crack your back and everybody's is crack your back, what makes you any different than somebody else?
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And regardless of the domain, whether it's chiropractic or software, or you want to sell widgets, or you're a service, consultant or a teacher, the jobs to be done framework is flexible enough to adapt to any domain or any field that you're in, or in any industry, right? And it's really a way of seeing. Ultimately, it's a lens, or it's a perspective that allows you to see whatever field that you're in, uncolored by your own biases and assumptions and ego. Ego is important, and your brand and your price point are important, and your product is important. I'm not saying that's not important, but you want the ability to shift away from that and see things completely different, because the market doesn't see you the way that you see you. The market doesn't see you the way that you see you. And ultimately, the market is going to decide whether you're a successful business person or not. Right. Yeah. You can try to steer that and drive against that. Right. But if you have that internalized empathy, or that external view, that outside in view, and you bake that into your product development, or your offering development, or your marketing messages, and how you're approaching the market, if you bake that in, you're going to have a much bigger chance of success.
The other thing that this really helped me with, that people really struggle with, just raising my hand because I struggled with it a ton too, was niching down. Like this whole concept of niching, people get really riled about it, because and I know for me, it really tapped into feelings of like scarcity and like, well, who's going to buy from me if I get so specific? But let me tell you something, if you are not dealing in specificity right now, you are not going to hold a chance. And what jobs to be done helped me do is niche at like every level. So it allowed me to niche around that underserved market, that unmet need, that aspiration, that job to be done, right? And not necessarily on, say, industry or specialty or something like that, which you can absolutely do. And then you can do jobs to be done within that. But as somebody who works across different, industries of business, it allowed me to find a place to really call my own and really get hyper specific on who I work with and what I do.
Yeah. One of the biggest benefits that I've seen and that I teach is around focus, right? Because there's not a lack of ideas on how to market your product or how to become an 8-figure company, right? You can find resources and courses on that. There's also not a lack of ideas.
Or opportunity.
Or even, I ask people all the time, like, does your organization, or even if you're an independent consultant, do you lack ideas on what you could do? And typically it's no, I got a ton of ideas. In fact, the problem is, Jim, I have too many ideas, and you just get pulled in all these different directions. And what Jobs to be Done does is it helps you focus. So it has this reductive effect as well too. And it can be a little bit scary when you're like, oh, wait, I'm only going after that target job. And then you're researching, you're going down from there. It's like, wait, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And what Jobs to be Done does is it helps you say no to things because you've focused and you've prioritized.
It helps you identify the right opportunities to get in front of where you can make the most money. Because when you are using a differentiated strategy, this is what attracted me to that concept, completely, is it's the strategy of premium pricing. When you have something that is, when you have a market that's underserved with an unmet need, you're able to charge more because there's so much differentiation. You're not commoditizing yourself.
Right. Yep.
So you're completely taking, and whether you're a coach or a web designer, a chiropractor, there's commoditization there if you can't stand out.
Right.
And it helps you figure out, like Jim said, what to focus on, what opportunities to go after, what to say yes or no to. And those are all things that help you pay yourself first and to pay yourself more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it has just absolutely completely shifted because, and here's maybe my last point is it makes you referable. What makes, if you want more referrals, if you want more word of mouth, if you want more organic lead gen, if you want more borrowing people's audiences and getting in front of people's audiences, why should they refer you? Why should they have you on? Like, why? Right? And they need to know, your partners need to know how to be able to communicate that. So if somebody is going around like, make more money, I want to find clients now, they're not going to refer me. But the second someone says that I've been doing all of this work, I'm 5 years into my business and I'm still not paying myself what I feel I deserve to be paid. Someone's going to go talk to Tara, go listen to the Bull Money Revolution podcast, because that's what she talks about.
Yeah.
Right. If someone's like, how do I make money on Instagram? They're not coming to me. That's not why you would refer me.
Yeah.
And so it's really helped me become more referable. It's helped me get other opportunities to partner and to generate organic leads that I don't have to pay for.
Yeah. And then that's that distinction between purchasing and what I call adopting. And by adopting, I mean is the individuals that you're serving got the value out of it that they were looking for. They fulfilled those unmet needs, and they pulled you as a solution into their problem space, and you solved their problem. You didn't just make a sale and then they said, nah, I'm never going to buy that again, or I'm not going to recommend this to anybody. You literally solved their problem. That not only increases your chance of purchase, but it increases your chance of repeat purchase, or as you just said, referrals as well too.
Correct.
And, NPS, the Net Promoter Score, is based on that one question. Would you recommend this to somebody else if you're familiar with NPS, right?
Yep.
And think about that. What it's saying is not, did you think you spent the right amount of money on this product? Is no, or service. It's, did you get value out of it? And the key indicator, if they've truly adopted it, is recommendations. That's what NPS measures, is did they get the value out of it that they were looking for? I put it in the terms of adoption. They pulled it in and made it part of their problem solving that they had to do. They are more willing to recommend you. That's the core to what NPS is. And to some degree, what Jobs to Be Done helps you do. It helps you try to find that sweet spot ahead of everybody else in your market.
Yes, when you start to understand why they buy and what those points of urgency are, that's definitely happened to us. We've been able to get people earlier on and identify what those points of urgency are for them to get to them sooner, so we can have them in our business and supporting them even longer.
Right.
It's cut down on time to conversion. So people say, oh, well, I have a really long sales cycle. No longer for us. We have a very quick, short sales cycle. We're converting quicker. And we are making better use of the leads that we do have, because the people fail to remember that there's a cost to selling, right? There's a cost to acquiring the customer. That's actually the most expensive part of your customer journey. In the buying decision journey is when you're in that acquiring them phase. But once you have them and they enter that loyalty loop, like Jim was just talking about, and that starts to raise your lifetime value of a customer, because what you're essentially doing is your customers are leading the growth of your company if you're listening to them, right? That's what your subtitle for the book is: Align Your Markets, Organizations, and Strategy around Customer Needs.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's your customer needs that are driving the growth of your business. They will tell you what products and services you need to offer next and when.
Correct.
So when you keep them in that loyalty loop and they refer and they stay with you, then you're increasing that lifetime value, which then allows you to go and invest more in the business.
And that's why we said, at the beginning of the conversation, business is not a math problem. It's a human problem.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what we're saying. But then, the question comes in, well, how do I on a regular and repeated and consistent basis understand needs and prioritize them and identify them? And there's lots of in and outs to that. So first of all, I also want to say, just as a disclaimer, there's no guarantees. Jobs to be done can help you get there. And there are some ins and outs in driving the system as well, too. So it's not necessarily, it's more like learning a language that you have to develop a skill over time. There are things you can pick up and start using right away, but to get to the point that we're talking about takes a little bit of practice to get into that. But once you're able to do that, once you're able to look at the human side of your business, it does open up a lot of opportunities and conversations and new ways of thinking about how you're going to reach your market, what offerings you're going to offer them, and just how you're going to present yourself in the world. It has the potential to change a lot of your thinking.
Yeah. If you're in my world, if you're in the Bold Profit Academy, if you're on my email list, you will see we frequently survey. It is a part of our DNA as a company. It is a part of our culture that we are giving our customers opportunities to share their needs with us and to see how we can coalesce around what those needs are and to help them make progress. And we use it to continuously improve everything from our free offers to our paid offers, because what I think we've really done is made jobs to be done a habit,
right.
An organizational habit.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you probably mean when you say align your markets and organization.
Agreed. Yeah.
It's your organization. It's the company.
It is. And, it might sound like a diet pill, but it's actually a lifestyle change. Like when you go to the doctor and you're like, I'm overweight, and they say exercise more. It's like, they're not just going to give you a pill. Right. So a little of this is a little bit of lifestyle change, and it does take some undoing of current thinking and some new redoing of new thinking. So there is a little bit of effort you have to put into it. And there's also no guarantees, but the theory holds that you can have a leg up on your competitors or others in the market by understanding those needs. And as you pointed out in the subtitle of my book, that it's really about aligning the needs with what you're offering, or aligning your offering to the needs. And that's your starting point. So that it's interesting, because you don't think of, oh, I have a product or a service, and then go look for the need. It should be the other way around. It should be, who do I want to serve? What do they need? And then create the solution that aligns to that. When you do that, you'll have a lot of this effect that we were talking about, of people pulling you into their lives, recommending you, staying around longer, and all of those other things.
Yeah. So I want to be respectful of your time. So I want to wrap us up and roll us out. What is the one thing, especially right now in an uncertain economy, things are slowing down a little bit. Buying decisions are slowing down. Yeah. What would be kind of like a tip, an insight, something that you can share with people who are feeling that maybe anxiety around things slowing down? What is one piece of advice that you could give them?
I would say continue pulling on the business levers that you've already set up, but also leave time for you to ask, what is the job that people are trying to get done? Not as users or as consumers. The job is not use more of me. That's your problem. What's their problem that they're trying to solve? And just stop and just have a moment of reflection around that, and do that as a team, assuming that you're more than one person, is that it needs to be, it's not just analysis that you put up on a chart. It needs to be something that everybody around you understands as well, too. So together as a group, reflect on, what are they trying to get done, the individuals that I'm serving, and just have that moment of reflection. That's probably the first place to get started with jobs thinking.
Yeah. And I actually want to clarify some of what Jim said, because it was absolutely brilliant. And I'm not sure if people are going to get how brilliant it is. So I really want to just peel it apart for a second. He said, set time aside for reflection. That's what he said. And then he said, answer the question, what's the job people are trying to get done? So I want to just piece out how simple that was, because so many people have trouble setting time aside. They think that reflection is navel gazing and not doing, right? And they'll try and answer 10 questions and not one. So I just, in what he said was so simple. It's actually the essence of Jobs to Be Done, because it is really simple once you understand
it's almost, if you do it right, it's obvious. You look back on Jobs to Be Done and you say, no, duh. But you know what? We don't take the time to actually put that obvious, self-evident stuff down and then prioritize around that.
Yeah. So I want everybody to just set time aside for reflection on what's the job people are trying to get done. And what I really love about Jobs to Be Done, if it's not obvious already, because I really love a lot of things, it's not about poking at the pain of the problem. It's about what progress are they trying to make? What is the job they're trying to get done? So it completely reframes typical marketing thinking in that sense as well. So Jim, thank you so much. I'm greatly honored to have you grace the presence of this podcast, even though you're just a normal guy. I make you out to be more than that. How can people find you? What do you have for them that maybe would be helpful?
Yeah, sure. Well, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I love meeting people there. So you can find me out on LinkedIn. You know, there's the book. If you want to check out the book, it's the Jobs to Be Done.
Yeah, we'll link to it.
Okay, great. That'll be in the show notes then. But on the heels of that book, we also launched a resource called the Jobs to Be Done Toolkit. It's www.jtbd. So it's abbreviated jtbdtoolkit.com. jtbdtoolkit.com. And we have some free downloads there. We also have a video course if you want to do something self-paced. And then we also have live trainings that we do as well, too. Because to unpack everything that we just said, Tara, as you know, there's a lot of detail and nuance and practice and things like that. So we're trying to give people practical resources there over at the Jobs to Be Done Toolkit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will link to that in the show notes. Thanks so much for coming on, Jim.
Hey, it was really fun speaking with you, Tara. And thanks everyone for listening.
If you found this podcast valuable, help us develop more bold leaders in the world by sharing this episode with your friends, colleagues, and other bold leaders. Also, if you haven't done so already, please leave a review. I consider reviews like podcast currency, and it's the one thing you can do to help us out here at the Bold Leadership Revolution HQ. We would be so grateful for it. Special thanks goes to Stacey Harris from Uncommonly More, who is the producer and editor of this podcast. Go check them out for all your digital marketing and content creation needs. Be sure to tune into the next episode to help you embrace your ambition and leave the grind behind.